Witamy ponownie, zapraszamy.
Welcome once again. We are inviting to the next panel what heroes are necessary for the unpredictable crisis needs international collaboration to combat its consequences, where the legendary operation of Solidarity can be inspiration for current operation of young people. These are the questions we shall try to answer. Questions. The panel shall be moderated by Emilia Hańczuk from Solidarność Union, and our speakers are Sigrid Schraml, General Secretary of Employees, Krzysztof Świątek, editor of Polish Radio, and Elżbieta Rafalska, deputy member of the European Parliament. So I give floor to Emilia Hańczuk. Good morning. I'm delighted to be a moderator of today's forum, today's panel of the forum, with the title, What Heroes Are Necessary for Contemporary World? And we know that the world is facing great crisis and great challenges, and we should think whether solidarity will be answer to this question. So I should start question from question to Elżbieta Rafalska. So we shall move to other questions. Speaking about European integration, we should put stress to its economic aspect, but the Solidarity Trade Union suggests to develop integration in social aspects. I would like to ask Marek Lewandowski, the spokesperson of Solidarity Trade Union, whether we can develop a common position in terms of social policy. Thank you. I can say that in EU we have a freedom of capital transfer, a freedom of economic activities, but these rules are not applicable to labor market. Solidarity not only postulates to unify the trade labor market, because within the Fiat concern, employees from Torino do the same what our employees from Tychy, but they get 3 times more. So these inequalities are unhealthy, and they must be changed. It is why Solidarity suggests collective agreements, trade agreements, not only location but also sectoral, and in case of EU, also international. In many activities EU, European Commission, other organizations of European Union see the need to equalize these unbalances. European minimum salary is the point that is implemented in several locations, but it is a common belief that such activities are necessary. European social card is also something that is addressing to the awareness that inequality is seen. We have a resistance from employers in European Union, and on the other hand, we have delamination on differentiation on the labor market that still remain local because rules are local, but the business activities is global, in particular large concerns. And without such operation that unify the situation in European Union, it is difficult to imagine that such a situation shall be remedied.
whereas Eastern Europe at the end of the 20th century was struggling with a different problem, with communism. I wanted to ask about the role of international solidarity in aiming at democratization of East European countries, and whether the ideas and the will to help and get united, is it up to date in today's world? Mr. Krzysztof Świątek, member of editing Polish Office of Polish Radio. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think this solidarity, although this question should be addressed at historians, I guess, because these are specialists who are studying it, but before our panel, I read a few press articles on the subject, and we must admit that international solidarity was very vivid at that time. It was especially alive. The holy truths in case of Saint John Paul II and Ronald Reagan. It is in this case important that that two attacks were carried out in 30th of March, attack at President Reagan. The bullet went a few centimeters away from the heart of the President of the US, and 2 months later attack at life of John Paul II, and in case of John Paul II it is practically confirmed. In case of Ronald Reagan, people say it was a madman actually making this attempt, but wasn't it that the empire of the evil wanted to in a short time remove two people who were a threat to it? After introduction of martial law, we saw the symptoms. Demonstrations were organized by citizens of Western communities, demonstrations in France, in Paris, and then in London, and those were manifestations by thousands of people. And first of all, it was solidarity of spirit. Clearly, it was visible that the societies enforced certain response on the leaders of Western countries, Western states. It was clearly visible in Germany when, for example, the Chancellor Helmut Schmidt met Honecker, the leader of German Democratic Republic, and he recognized that martial law was granted, or even it read necessity, and only response of the German society enforced a form of supporting the Solidarity trade union, and maybe said that international solidarity at that time was first of all granted by the trade unions. It was the trade unions in the West who supported solidarity, like today, NSZZ Solidarity. We can see it with our own eyes. Marek Lewandowski actually is getting involved in supporting the employees and trade unions in Belarus. Also Piotr Duda, the leader of Solidarity trade union, say that Solidarity feels obliged. Like in the past they were getting support from trade unions of Western countries. Here we may mention AFL-CIO, American headquarters, which only in 1980-82, when martial law was imposed, supported the Solidarity trade union with the amount of $250,000, but there was also support coming from French trade unions or from other Western countries. But it was not only financial support, it was also support by raising the problem. It was support in kind mentioned by Western trade union members, like telex connection system in place at that time. We didn't have internet then. It was also food support or medicine, but also printing equipment. But it was also raising the topic internationally, where Western trade unions had a great share in it. So there was a certain synergy, solidarity of Western trade unions themselves as those supporting the Solidarity trade union and support from international society. And only this synergy enforced certain response from Western leaders, especially regarding Germany and France. This support from trade unions and reaction of Western communities enforced such a reaction. This was not needed in case of the US because there was some solidarity of activities by President Reagan and American trade unions. This is what we can find in historic documents, and of course the solidarity which was actually raised by John Paul II through his pilgrimage, but also raising this topic constantly internationally. He enforced response from the Western world. Well, we could now, by the way of Solidarity 40th anniversary, we could hear, unfortunately, the words of Lech Wałęsa as if John Paul II did not overturn communism. Undoubtedly, he had his input, as we know from historians. And you ask whether this readiness still exists today. If we look at the activities of today's Solidarity, the one which started 40 years ago and whose members are still present. Piotr Duda is the best example. He has been in Solidarity since September 1980, and he says, yes, there is a need for Solidarity now to pay off certain obligation or certain debt. They were obtaining support, and now they want to support the trade union members and the society of Belarus in their aiming at freedom and independence, at actually shaking off the chains of dependence. And we may ask whether this solidarity is regarding other Western countries. For example, today Marcin Przydacz, Minister of Foreign Affairs, said that Western leaders are short of courage today regarding displaying solidarity with Belarus or response to poisoning of Alexei Navalny, that means opposition activist in Russia. We can see those responses are very delayed and weak, and this solidarity in the West is actually weak. You can see it clearly in the position of Solidarity trade union, but in the West it is really weak, and perhaps we have to wait for it.
Thank you cordially. I can see that Elżbieta Rafalska is with us. Mistress MP, observing the international situation, can you see symptom of international solidarity? The various actions are taken to fight, to combat pandemia. What are the strategies adopted by various countries? The strategy of isolation. I welcome you cordially. 10 days of attempt to establish connection demonstrate that the world of remote connection is not perfect, and it is not a matter of our dreams, and international contacts have a strong advantage. But coming to the topic, the question is justified, because I can say honestly that pandemia surprised us, although one could cope better, other ones worse. But there was an expectation that we shall experience that EU solidarity, how it looked like at the beginning. First, you have international isolation. That was a good way to resolve the problem. The member countries not only have competences in healthcare, but quick actions where Poland can be presented as an example of countries that could cope very quickly with limitation, with discipline of Poles, who are also co-participants or the co-creators of the lower rate of infections on the background of other countries. It was similar with other countries. But if questions asked whether international solidarity appeared and what was the support from the EU, we can discuss to lost the ability to see. We were looking for help, but Ursula von der Leyen excused Italians, not only Italians. Here, the ability of EU to react quickly demonstrated its weakness as in full scale. It turned out that it's not very mobile and efficient. It was a real check after Brexit. If the next attempts were not undertaken, maybe the Eurosceptic attitudes would go up. And the EU undertook, a moment later, but anyway, undertook actions. But the first impression was the strongest, because at the beginning we were surprised with that pandemic. Actually, the actions were undertaken, focused on prevention to prevent extension of the epidemic, but for a long-term perspective, EU works to alleviate economic effects caused by pandemic. Closing of borders, internal borders, was a phenomenon, but it was indispensable, but it's not the target solution. We all became aware that pandemia does not respect borders, and collaboration is mandatory. Here, there was support to organize tenders and buy medical equipment, or to organize international tender that more than 3 billion euros to support medical staff, elevation of rules, accessibility to European Fund of Solidarity, stimulation of the economy recovery. But anyway, I have an impression that we all get the evidence that on the beginning, in the beginning phase, the member countries could feel that they are left alone with their problems, or even abandoned. During the next phase, where we have actions related to stimulation of economy to bear the economic effects, we have the long-term financial framework changed. We have activities of European Central Bank, additional means to help the developing countries. These are the proposals presented by European Commission, but I must also refer to what was said by European Parliament, that during the debate did not save such countries like Poland and Hungary. Discussion about the rules of law that has nothing common with the topic and extends outside competence of the European Union. So where EU has its competences in terms of collaboration, coordination, fails to fulfill their competences or insufficiently fulfills. But in case of rules of law, or assessment of Polish the card system treats these countries in unfair way. The general impression that was established and the claims do not result from the false start, because false start is start before other, but it was a much delayed start, and you had to catch up all the losses that resulted from the you demonstrated that the institution that is less mobile, less creative, although it makes the impression that is able to intervene in any area. Thank you for your speech. I would like to ask the next question.
As you quite rightly noticed, at the beginning was difficult for Solidarity. It was not so obvious for Solidarity. So my question is as follows: whether, due to the fact that every state have their own individual interests, national interests, isn't it so that focusing on our own individual interests influences our building of international community and solidarity? Well, isn't it so that we talk of international solidarity, but we must not forget that every state has its own individual interests? Well, they were saying that those... Hello? Yeah, I can hear you perfectly well, but yes, it would be an illusion and actually a change of the meaning if we said that those interests do not exist. The EU is not a superpower, super state, which actually acts on behalf of governments in all activities and is a strong and prime mover. We are not talking of super state. Those national interests are represented by the Germans, the French, the Italians, and we have to, and definitely we do, notice it, and we take care of our own national interests and about the situation of Polish economy. Is there room for this international solidarism and this common denominator for Europe being more in solidarity? For sure, yes. Even quite recently, President Macron said more Europe and strong prime moving Europe. So today, can we say who benefits to a greater extent from this stronger prime moving EU, whose interests are bigger in the EU? Well, with a naked eye, we can see that among those are Germany, France, and that countries of the north are stronger here, benefit more, are greater beneficiaries of this European cake, that inside strong struggle about competitiveness of own economies is going on. We may mention the directive like the one regarding delegating or mobility of employees. These are also those legal acts of the EU which hit some economies which grew too much. So we have to look for this, what this common interest is possible, because this pandemic crisis showed that these economies are also intertwined inseparably. So we have to protect them and show, take out and drag them out from a much deeper crisis than the one in 2008, to draw conclusions which will allow us to build a resistance and become independent to a greater extent than so far.
Thank you a lot. I would like to return for a moment to what was mentioned by Krzysztof Świątek, role of trade unions in creating of international solidarity. And I have a question to Marek Lewandowski. It is a question about success of solidarity. Now we have 4th anniversary of Solidarity Foundation, and it was a trade union that played the most important role for combating communism in Poland, and also to defeating communism in other countries. Now Belarus also fights. It fights against the regime, and Solidarity also gave hand to support Belarusian. What Belarusian people can be inspired by our history, the fight that Polish citizens undertook when they combated communism in their country. What is going on our eyes resembles what happened 40 years ago in Poland. The success of Solidarity was the mass participation. No, it's not true that it was underground expert and association. It's not true, because Solidarity was founded since workers striked in mass amounts, huge amounts, and it was more than 700,000 striking employees. What he transferred to our friends in Belarus, real democratic trade union in Belarus, it's experience that our factories were our castles, where we could safely defend against the forces. The mass of protest spread out, and it was the factor that decided that communist power moved back, decided to conclude agreements that have led to establishing of a free trade union. It is what we would like to transfer to our Belarusian friends. It is the visit of Piotr Duda when he offered support in training of leaders that could be set up free trade unions. But I would like to refer to one thread. It is time for hard work, because EU trade unions united in European Federation of Trade Unions must get to work, must get involved in support to their colleagues on Belarus, because the Belarusian trade union affiliated in association. Solidarity shall be an agent, shall be a bridge for all those who want to provide help. We have contact with Belarusians. There are still more and more people who escape from Belarus. We would like to provide them shelter, to train them, and they speak. There was a change of mentalities, and it mustn't be turned back. We don't know how long it will take. It took 9 years in Poland. I hope that it will be shorter in Belarus, but the process cannot be turned back. And these trade unions must provide material, logistic support, assistance, use international pressure by international organization of work, because trade unions are a better instrument to export that international solidarity to Belarus, that shall be able to get free from that regime represented by Alexander Lukashenko.
Well, in a way, you have responded to my next question. I was planning to ask you, it was to be whether international organizations, trade unions included, can be the driving engine to build international cohesion. And I think we will agree that they may and they even have to. Therefore, I will take the opportunity to move on to questions. I would like to ask our guests from other countries.
Starting with Mr. Georgi Agerbaya, founder of Proactive Group Georgia. International solidarity can be understood and interpreted in many different ways. I would like to ask you, what are the aspects it can take on?
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here. You hear me all well, right? Good.
Yes.
Great. So it's my pleasure to be here and among these panelists, and it's big applause to the organizers. So keep it this online level and to make it virtual. So this tradition is kept very good side. And well, what about the question? So I would say that international cooperation is one of the core elements of the international solidarity, but it shouldn't be limited only by the late aid, humanitarian assistance, or let's say different support from this case, humanitarian or aid or charity, etc. Because we should understand is a broader perspectives and concept of the international solidarity. In terms of it's about living, all members and the international communities coexistence and living peacefully. At the same time, it should be understand much a broader understanding of the concept, like it could be international relations, cooperations, and in the economics also. Because I would say that we had different cases, and especially in this pandemic world showed us how much is important to have our international solidarity and for sustainability, because if you want to make this sustainability, it should be also include for the developing of the financing, because this is one of huge resources, and I think that you demonstrated it very well during this pandemic world, which also Georgia got a lot of support in terms of, but there could be different perspectives. So what I would say, one of the mentions, what the influences of the international cooperation in terms of solidarity, because it influences in many different ways. If we take like political support or economical and etc. Because let's imagine that if we have like a stronger neighbors and stronger partners, we have less difficulties in the region and we have much security. And when we have security and stability, we have the more chances for developing and to achieving the progress in our society and in Europe. And that's, I think, the core values we have, and especially it's visible with the cooperation of the European Union and Eastern Partnership. And I would bring one of the example, for example, into for the political and the economic, let's say, influence and how much it can, let's say, support of democratic development in the partner countries, which is, let's say, now the democracy is developing and not, let's say, in the perfect stage, but I would say reminds the case of the 2018 in Georgia when we had the Russian intervention during the August, and international solidarity stood up not only for Georgia but for these main values of the sovereignty and to support the region and region stability. And there was a lot of support from the US, European Union, etc. But what I would love to mention and highlight, one of the great case, I would say that when we had the 5 presidents coming during the war. It was August of 12 when we hosted, let's say, 5 presidents coming from the Baltic states, Poland, and Ukraine. And I would highlight that from the Mr. President, former President Lech Kaczynski, who is the actual national hero also in Georgia. So he was saying that we come today here in Georgia to support the democratic and independent sovereign country, because if it will be today Georgia and we don't support and we don't express our solidarity towards Georgia, it might be next, say, Ukraine, and it might be next the Baltic states or Poland, because we all know this Russian regime and from the past common history which unites us. And from this perspective, I would say that it was a great remarks, and after we celebrating the 14th anniversary of the solidarity, it could be the very good cases and to reach to the young generation. And I think it's one of the great program from this perspective of what influences on the international aspects for the Solidarity, I would say the European Solidarity Corps, which is a youth program, but a very great step forward, which develops the spirit and values that motivates young people to understand better how can build a more democratic Europe and how can build the solidarity in Europe. Because this program is especially for the young people, and it helps a lot of different things to increase, to strengthen this understanding of the citizenship in the Europe. And especially this is great that our, let's say, people from the partner countries like Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and other partner countries, Belarus or Ukraine, etc., can participate in such cases. What I would say is, let's summarize for this point, that if we have the stronger neighbors and with a win-win situation, this is for everyone. As I mentioned today also, I was listening carefully about the great speech of the Mr. President, and what I took from this international cooperation and solidarity, because if you want to support if you want to invest in future, and if you want to invest a better European future, we need to much more support in understand and strengthen the international solidarity from the economical side, from the political side. Sometimes statements are good, but I think that when there is possibility and actions makes sounds louder. So, and I think that these steps made by the European Commission and let's say our neighbors is always engage us, motivates us to do more for fruitful cooperation between the countries, between the institutions. And this direction, I think that we need to develop more and more. And if you want to invest in a future, we invest in international solidarity, and through one of the things could be a solidarity of the engaging from the youth aspects and empowering youth in this direction.
Thank you very much. Especially thank you for bringing up the example of our late President Lech Kaczyński. And now I would like to ask another question to Ms. Sigrid Schraml, Secretary General of the European Center of Workers' Questions. And as the Secretary General of ESA, you have a great opportunity to observe closely how cross-border cooperation affects the matters of Europe and similar countries. Can you please explain to us the importance of this cooperation and what is crucial to make it successful?
Bardzo dziękuję za zaproszenie do tej dyskusji, do forum.
Thank you very much for invitation to this discussion, to Forum of Young Leaders. I'm very glad that I can participate in this debate, and I apologize for continuing in English because Polish would be a bit too difficult for me.
ESA is a network of currently 70 trade unions and workers' organizations across Europe. We are represented in 29 European countries, and cooperation is the reason of existence for our network. So we are Europeans, we are Democrats, and we are all fighting for workers' rights in Europe, in the EU, and beyond. And our clear focus and aim is to cooperate, to learn from each other, which is that we organize trainings for our members on all kind of questions regarding the labor market. And we all have, I think, understood that we cannot do it alone, but that we need the cooperation, and we all understood and experienced that it's a richness which we have, and that we can all profit from each other, that we can learn from each other if we cooperate. And if you look at the European internal market, it's an open market for all European citizens, for all European and national companies. We have labor mobility, so the free movement of labor and of citizens. And so it's clear that we need to cooperate in order to find common rules, how to regulate this market and how to regulate workers' rights. And of course, we have seen that that we need to defend workers' rights, and that not everything is going right, and that we need certain minimum standards for all people, and that there are many questions arising if you work across Europe. If you have a lorry driver who goes from Lithuania across Poland, Germany to Belgium and then back, he's crossing 4 countries with different national laws. and we need to find European laws for this kind of actions. And so this is why we exist, and this is why our members, our trade unions, and I'm very happy that Solidarność is also a member of ESA, that we cooperate, because why do it alone if you know that you can do it better, much better, if we do it jointly? And I think the European Union has also understood that, and this is why I'm happy that we receive also funds from the European Union. And I'm happy that we have with Pani Rafalska also an MEP here among us in this debate, because I hope that the EU budget will also vote on the budget 21 and give further support to the cooperation also of trade unions in the EU, because as has already been mentioned also by other participants in this debate, it's really core, it's really very much important. And as you ask, what is needed for this cooperation, I think, first of all, you need an open-mindedness. You need interest, not indifference, but interest in what your neighbor is saying, that you take seriously what the other person is saying, even if you maybe don't understand them or if you have another opinion. It is important that you just listen to it and that you take it seriously, and that you afterwards, just think about common solutions, joint solutions. It's normal that countries have national interests, but I think the EU and all of us, all citizens, whole of Europe is just profiting and moving forward to better life for all if we cooperate. So that's really essential, I think.
Thank you very much. After hearing all these comments, I can't help but wonder, what is it really that the world needs today? Charismatic leaders, or maybe it's intensified and well-organized actions at the heart of society? Mr. Georgi Agiewa, can you please share your opinion on that topic?
So it's my pleasure. Sure. I mean, thank you very much. These very interesting questions, because we have a lot of discussions it's about, from one side, we have charismatic leaders who have all the skills needed, and the people easily follow, and it's like a role model. From the other side, with the followers and with the people who can be self-organized at the same time. We have different examples, and I think that it's better to analyze according to the history, and let's say what the practices we have. According to this, we could see which part would be much better. So if you take this Belarusian situation in Belarus now, and my full support and solidarity to the free democratic nations, the people of Belarus. And actually, I believe, because it was in my childhood, in 97 and 98, I lived in Belarus. There was Lukashenko as the president. Now I'm around like 27, 28, and there is still Lukashenko as the president. So I think that this regime should be changed, and it's solidarity of the organized people. It's let's say appreciated. But what we see is that Belarus now, that the lack of the leaders and the lack of the opposition leaders in the country. And from that perspective, because we see there are several days of let's say thousands of people demonstrates, so let's say 100,000, even more people in the streets, but still we don't have these results. So what we take in the situation, because we also had the Georgian case practices. So when the youth demonstrated, when you have this lack of the experience, even though you have like a right to demonstrate, and there is thousands of people in Georgia, I feel that these leaders needed, and these leaders it doesn't mean that it's like a political party's demonstration, but coexistence and cooperation in this direction with the political leaders, or like leaders in general. I think that supports much more, because if we have like this power, and if we have this synergy, but we don't have the person who gives us direction, or that, let's say, I think the leader in this direction gives the direction, and if the right leaders give the right direction, so we achieve our like final results faster. So as a conclusion, I would say that taking into consideration that with the style of the right leadership, and taking into consideration the current situation, because in Georgia it might be easily that if it's one person or one political party has a lot of power, let's say, they can be towards attracted by the authority, or as we see in Belarus, or to the dictatorship. But in countries we don't have these organized groups, there should be some person should be motivated and encouraged to join to the civil protest. From that perspective, I would say that in Europe there is no problem, but I would say that in Europe I wish other type of leaders. In European Union, I'm a member state, I would say that there is a lot of great people in this direction, but in the political parties, but I would say that from the directions that young people engaged in more political parts, because there's very diverse groups, very diverse engagement, because we need kind of other type of leaders in developing countries. I think in European Union, they have their needs also leadership, but mostly combined situation, I think that this synergy can play the best way. The charismatic plus self-organized action group, because as we see from the past and history teaches us, that mostly that these people unites us, and those leaders unite us, and after this unites, when we united, we reached achieved the faster. For example, in US, when we had a Martin Luther King, and let's say other presidents, or let's say in the European situation also, that when we had these true leaders, they make, from my perspective and from our history, we see that makes much faster goals and develops the process much faster to the new level. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess we need both. We need strong leaders and big numbers, right? And I believe we have reached the moment when I simply had to ask the question that's stated in the title of this panel discussion, and that is, what kind of heroes the world needs today? And can we all become a hero and contribute to a better and unified future? And is it actually possible that engaging with civil society organizations can develop, can bring positive developments on a world scale? And that's the question I would like to give to Ms. Sigrid Schraml.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I don't like so much the word hero. I mean, the question is, how do you define a hero? For me, it sounds a bit like a Superman flying around and having superhuman powers. And I think that every single person, just a normal person, as we are all here participating in this debate, we can make a difference. And just in your normal environment, in your family, if you meet friends at your working place, at university, or wherever you are, I think we can all make a difference. It's not about being a hero, but you need to be authentic. You need to have convictions. You have to stand up for your convictions. And of course, there are situations where it demands much more courage, like now in Belarus, for example. And so there, it's of course much more difficult to stand up for your rights because the consequences are much more severe and the danger is much bigger. But in general, I would say it's up to civil society, to make a difference. We cannot leave it just I'm sorry, but not only to politicians. So I don't want to offend Pani Rafalska, but it's a combination. We need leaders, but we also need just civil society who is acting. And if you look, for instance, just to give an example, at Greta Thunberg, I mean, she was just, defending her convictions, sitting there in front of the Swedish parliament and saying, okay, I do not accept how society, how the global community is dealing with climate change. So I'm sitting here to protest against this. And I mean, her idea was not to create a global movement, but it has just grown out of it. So she just did the first step, and something big has come out of it. And I think there are so many other examples for that. Or to give an example from Germany, I don't know if you have seen the pictures on TV on the all the demonstrations, violent demonstrations against the COVID-19 measures in Germany, and all these right-wing neo-Nazis demonstrating in front of our parliament. So terrible pictures. And I think, of course, it's the job of the police to be active and to go against this. But it's also the question, what is society and civil society doing? So are there just normal people standing up and saying, no, that's not our democracy. That's not how we would like to live in our country, and we don't accept that. So I think there are many small steps every just normal person can do, and yeah, it's not only a question of being a big hero, but doing small steps, and all the small steps of many different people, they all sum up to something which is powerful and which can make a difference.
I couldn't agree with you more. I also believe that the change has to start within ourselves. Proszę Państwa,
Gentlemen, we have exhausted time of our panel. I will change whether there are some questions from application. There are no questions. I will allow to ask one more question. Since to Mr. Lewandowski, he is the representative of media. Krzysztof Świątek, there are various kind of information, and I believe we live in the time of so-called fake news. It is a real art to find something valuable from the stream of information. Could you say, as a representative of mass media, to tell us about the importance of mass media? Just I will answer the question. I would like to mention at the beginning to appreciate our colleague from Georgia. I was listening with great interest to his first speech related to international solidarity. Dziękuję.
Former President Lech Kaczyński as an example of this international solidarity in 2008 when it was the Russian aggression for Georgia, and you have said that that Lech Kaczyński is now a national hero of Georgia. So thank you very much for your saying, and it was really moving for us as a Pole, for me as a Pole and a Polish society. Chciałem podziękować, bo to naprawdę rzeczywiście było.
I would like to appreciate because it was really important. So coming back to your question, I would like to say that obviously we live in a time where we are in flood of information, and I do not say only as a journalist but also as a addressee of that information. We are not able to process all of that information we receive, but I think we should follow some criteria that are valid for journalism and science. Confrontation of sources is the first. We can follow the rule that we must verify information provided by one source to another sources. We should refer to the example that mass media in USA, Fox News is sympathetic to Republican, and CNN to Democratic Party. And when we listen to the both station, we can find out our own viewpoint. But with regard to criteria, it is important to base on own experience. We are talking in the circle of trade unionists, the professional related to trade unions. If in Poland Solidarity organized a large manifestation during the rule of Platforma Obywatelska, these were demonstration of against increasing of the pensioner age. There was a demonstration of 200,000 people, and then one of TV station I won't mention, it's not the rule. We could hear that lower number of demonstration or deflected ideas of solidarity. So for me, as the participant of the demonstration, as also an active journalist, such mass media is not reliable, because if I participated in the demonstration, I could see with naked eye how numbers was the demonstration, then it is lowered by 3 or 4 times. Can I ask whether the leader of the trade union, Piotr Duda, who was fighting to lower the pension age, was he able to speak in the mass media, or only the person who invited who defended increasing of the pension age? If I was a participant of that event, that were on my eyes, and they were related with fake news in some different mass media, so I must approach with a great distance to such mass media. I would like to say about one more factor that is also important in the context of Belarus. You can see that Alexander Lukashenko tried and keeps trying to isolate society from internet. If we would like to seek for reliable source of information, we must also appreciate the role of internet. It is also the source to verify a source of information. We must confront Svetlana Tikhanovskaya spoke today that it was impossible to stop that social media. YouTube channels couldn't be, Twitter couldn't be stopped, couldn't be switched off, because Belarusian citizens also provide relations from and the dictator Lukashenko says that signal will be broadcasted by the Poland. Modern technologies also present support, an example of international solidarity. So to come to conclusion, it is best way to base on well-verified media that use reliable authorities, correspondents who are proven, and scientific authorities. We have scientists who live in Germany, in France, can transfer reliable information for these countries. Confrontation many sources and use of social media as a supplement to traditional media. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for conversation. We could hear many interesting comments.
Foreign guests. Thank you for spending your time by this conversation. To wszystko ode mnie i dziękuję serdecznie.
It's all for me. Thank you a lot. Thank you. The conversation was the moderator Emilia Hańczuk, representative of Solidarity Trade Union. And as a comment to that topic, I would like to listen to Luca Jahier, president of the European Economic and Social Committee.
Bardzo szczęśliwy jestem, że mogę być wirtualnie z Wami na Ekonomicznym Forum Młodych Liderów w tych wyjątkowych czasach, kiedy Europa walczy z wpływem pandemii covidowej.
Economic, social, environmental and cultural solution. This pandemic is a wake-up call alerting us to the necessity to change our way of living, of consuming and of producing. We must not fall into the trap of striving to come back to the situation before Corona. But we need to reshape our society in a new, better manner. 40 years ago, Solidarity fought for change, for a new order, for a new start, for democracy in the communist regime in Poland. Now again, solidarity, equality, freedom, and sustainability must be at the very core of our common endeavor to build a new Europe, the Europe of tomorrow for our fellow citizens. And to successfully answer to this challenge, we need the voice of youth. We need your voice. We need your support to rebel against the learned conformity of our behavior, which make us, the older generation, despite all our effort, produce the same result over and over again. The European Union needs young, creative, constructive rebellion. Coming to the topic of your panel, what kind of heroes does the world need in these challenging times? It is the heroes of our childhood, the supermen or women, the princess in shining armor, the valiant knights? No. Today, battles are not to be won by fearlessly or foolishly brandishing an iron sword. Today, heroes do fear, do have compassion, yet they fear for their fellow human beings, for the world they believe in, and it gives them the strength to keep standing in the storm. Our modern-day heroes, the heroes of this pandemic, are the doctors and the nurses, the essential workers, the bus and lorry drivers, the social workers, supermarket cashiers, street cleaners, the leader of small and medium enterprise, the artisan, all of whom that are making our society resisting, to be resilient, and to face the change. The civil society organization and their volunteers bringing food and care to those in need. The teachers reaching out to their classes to help children continue to learn and dream, and many others. All these people who put their own lives at risk, who surmount their fears to keep us all going. If we look closely, these are people like you and like me, or like whom we should strive to be. The motto of my presidency is Renaissance, for I am more and more convinced that Europe needs today a new Renaissance. The Renaissance was a powerful and vast humanistic revolution started in Italy at the end of the Middle Ages, which re-established the real dimension of culture in its concrete relation with science, the art of government, and the organization of economic and social life, and being the foundation of the modern transformation of Europe. Homo faber ipsius fortuna, this ancient word that means man is the artisan of his fortune, the protagonist of our present and future. We are our own heroes. Yes, to be a hero requires courage. It means caring for others. It calls for solidarity. It calls for daring to take decisive steps in a new direction. It calls for the capacity to take risk and to accept also to fail. Yet, as Søren Kierkegaard wrote, to dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. You, we all, must be the heroes for a better, sustainable future. Thank you.
And it was the comment how contemporary heroes should look like. We are finishing the discussion session, and in a few minutes we shall invite you to the final of the transmission, and we shall hear interviews with people who are in Karpacz at Economic Forum. And you are inviting to the next online transmission from, we shall visit Karpacz, who are guests of Economic Forum. I invite you to listen to the interview to Cornelius Ochman and Cornelia Dieper.
Witamy ponownie w studiu Forum Ekonomicznego Młodych Liderów podczas Forum Ekonomicznego
Welcome once again at the studio of Economic Forum during Economic Forum in Karpacz.
Członek zarządu Fundacji
The
Współpracy
director, member of
Polsko-Niemieckiej,
the board of foundation of Polish-German cooperation, Mr. Cornelius Ochman. Very warm welcome. First of all, I would like to ask you, what do you think about the 30 years which together as two nations, as Poland and Germany, I wanted to ask you about the 3 decades of cooperation. How could you summarize them, and what's more important, how you could evaluate the influence of this cooperation on Polish and German youth? Well, first of all, we must admit that after these 3 decades of cooperation, we can see gigantic positive economic results on both sides.
And Poland is developing faster than Germany. It's also visible, and it is a great opportunity for young people. 30 years ago, just after unification of Germany, German society was focused on consumption of that unification, and we must say openly that nobody was interested in Poland so much. Situation was changed in 2004 when Poland joined the European Union, and first from 2007 we have Schengen, and there is no border between our countries. It is also visible at universities, at companies. I have been working in Warsaw for 6 years, and I can see that still is less and less people in Warsaw, young people, that want to set off to Western countries. Career can be developed also in Poland. It is a great opportunity, and in 2020 there will be no important whether you are from Poland, from Germany, for great concerns for international companies, so the problem. And nowadays, after 30 years, we can see first companies, German companies, that build the offices in Poland, or Polish companies that invest in Germany. It's also a symptom of normalization, that after 30 years we achieved a positive outcome. Obviously, we have a lot of troubles. We have problems of different interpretation of the history, but as compared to the situation that was 30 years ago, I can see giant progress. And the best example that I can show to everyone, 3 years ago, I visited Balkan states. I was in Skopje in Macedonia, and when I I had a speech in Macedonian Parliament, and I spoke how the situation in Polish and German relationships, so Albanian, Macedonians, Slavic, didn't want to believe looking at the Polish and German relationships. So this is a positive outcome, and obviously we can speak openly about problems, but it is a symptom of normalization for me. I would like to ask from the perspective of a young person, because these 30 years of economic collaboration, but the uncountable projects such a forum of young leaders supported the foundation of Polish and German collaboration. We as young people must develop some skills, some attitudes, motivation, not to waste that potential that we could work out for 30 years. So the question to you, how we, young people, can approach to develop the collaboration, to waste the potential, to think in European categories. Nowadays, the global situation is being changed. It is not the best. The role of USA is being changed. China starts playing more and more important role. We can see problems with Russia, and no national country, neither Poland nor Germany, can resolve the problems alone. So it is the problem, message that we must strengthen the European viewpoint, because only as united Europe we can play important role. Thank you for that interview, and see you during next interview. Mariusz Bednarz, Economic Forum in Karpacz.
Szanowni Państwo, witamy ponownie w naszym studio.
Welcome again to our studio, Economic Forum of Young Leaders in Karpacz. I have our next interview, Cornelia Piper, General Consul of Germany in Gdańsk. Lady Cornelia, thank you for being with us. We are celebrating the round anniversary, 30 years of collaboration with Poland and Germany. Is the atmosphere of collaboration that brought up a full generation of Poles and Germans. I would like to ask you, what is the influence of the collaboration onto young people in our countries? I hope for very important influence of the collaboration. 30 years is a long time, and I would like to say first that these 30 years were wonderful. Because we arranged such a good collaboration with our citizens, and it is the most important that people can contact, can meet, can collaborate during learning at companies, at teams, and can laugh together. It is very important because our citizens build bridges between our countries, and now we must be focused on young generation. Young generation is our future in Europe, and the young generation has own ideas, modern ideas, and they must be matched, they must be adjusted to conditions to keep that collaboration very close and modern and good. I'm talking about it. Why not to speak about new levels of cooperation between our youth? We can take on digital projects to enable communication on internet. We can arrange a forum between Poland and Germany. It is a very important thing for future, and it is what we what defines quality of our interrelationships, whether our relationships will be as good as they are now. I would like to ask, maybe ask for a good message, good advice. How can they develop the competences to face? Be always curious, be always courageous, and be involved in fighting for freedom and solidarity. Thank you a lot. Thank you cordially. From Economic Forum of Young Leaders studio in Karpacz, Mariusz Bednarz was speaking.
Dziękujemy za te relacje.
Thank you for these messages from Karpacz. We have finished a very interesting day with 3 topic sessions about evolution, digital evolution and revolution. We were talking how to rebuild Europe after Corona crisis and what is the role of solidarity. And we also spoke about Solidarity trade union established 40 years ago, about its legend, its future, how it can inspire people to create a new world. And we had a special guest, Andrzej Duda, with a message to young leaders. And then he heard questions that you, as participant in the Forum of Young Leader, if you didn't see, this content is available on our website or on YouTube channels. It is the end of our meetings. On 6 o'clock, we have an intercultural meeting, and today at 9:30, the plenary session. I'm inviting to our studio, and then we shall see about the 3Cs agreement. Thank you for today. Thank you for staying with us. We are inviting for tomorrow.